Okay, listen up. I just sat down to have a conversation with Dr. Sameh Solomon, who is a recent graduate from dental school. He just graduated from ASDO a couple of weeks ago, and we recorded an episode for my podcast. That's episode 20 of the Teeth Time podcast. And normally with a podcast episode, I would upload it to the appropriate platforms and allow people to listen to it that way. But this conversation, my friends, was way too special to not make a YouTube video out of. This conversation with Dr. Sameh is basically everything that I think about content creation, about going into dentistry, about living a life worth living. I would love for each and every one of my subscribers to hear this conversation because he is such a genuine, honest, and just awesome dude. And he has so much life perspective about this entire process. And I really, really want you to hear it. So I've decided to make a video out of it. In this video, you will see my conversation with Dr. Sameh. We'll be sitting down to discuss life, dentistry, dental school, content creation, all the things that we do. And there's so much substance in this video, so I hope you enjoy it. If you want to listen to it, it will be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. But in this video version of it, you'll get to see me and Dr. Sameh sit down and talk about these things. It's really fantastic. This conversation had a major, major impact on me. It made me happy that I'm doing what I'm doing, getting to meet awesome people like this, and it just made me really excited for the future. So my friends, without any further ado, please enjoy this episode of Teeth Time. Dr. Sameh Solomon, welcome to the Teeth Time podcast. How are you today, brother?
Good. How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm so excited that we are finally doing this. I feel like I say this to a lot of my guests, but it seems like it's been a long time coming with this one. And I think this is the longest conversation that I've had with a guest before actually getting them on. So super excited to have you today.
Finally, I'm honored to be on your podcast and a fan of your work.
Heck yeah.
And I appreciate what you're doing for the pre-dental community and also the dental students that are currently in dental school. So just seeing someone that started their channel and were consistent about it, I'm gonna ask you some questions myself.
For sure. I would love to field any questions.
Yes. So I'm just your page has been consistent, and I really appreciate and applaud you for it. It's not easy from one YouTuber to the other. It's definitely not easy to keep your academics and keep the academia side of things while also keeping up with your channel and your fan base and just the people that really look up to you. So I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you so much. That means the world to me. And yeah, like I think you followed me on Instagram like months ago, and yes. I immediately was like, I think we started to communicate a little bit, and the first thing I noticed about you was that just like there was so much positivity on your page, and just like it was very informative and like tons of positivity. And I immediately was like, I'm gonna have to get this guy on here eventually, because I have been just slacking on the podcast. It's something that I said in the last episode I really enjoy doing, but just with everything else, like you just kind of alluded to there with the balance of school and trying to stick up with YouTube, it's like the podcast was shoved to the side a little bit. But I love doing it. So I'm excited to get you on here and to talk just about everything. You, sir, are a dentist. You just graduated from ASDO, I hear, like what, a couple weeks ago?
3 weeks ago. No, 4 weeks ago, May 13th. So yeah, that's 3 weeks ago.
Man,
3 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
It's like, can't even believe it.
Dude, that's fantastic.
But yeah, I'm a dentist now. So
how does it feel?
Oh, it feels amazing, man. It's the journey has been long coming, 12 years in the making, to be exact, and just to be on the other side of things as a dentist definitely built a lot of gratitude for the profession, for my hard work, for just the blessings and people that have supported me, not just mentors, but also mentees. And if I tell your audience any word of advice is it's good to have someone that you look up to and also have someone that looks up to you. It's that perfect balance because those mentees of mine are also my motivation because I carry a lot of weight and just having them depend on me and my success makes it all worth the while.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, once again, congratulations. It is something that I think about a lot. I mean, I think all of us do throughout dental school. There is so much, we spend so much time looking forward to the future. When you're a pre-dental student, you look forward to getting into dental school. And then when you're a dental student, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be a doctor in a few years. For me right now, a few weeks away from transitioning into the clinic. And so it hit me yesterday, actually, just how surreal it was in the moment of I'm going to actually be treating patients in a month. And that was wild to me because I feel like I've spent my whole life thinking about, well, someday I'll be a dentist, someday I'll do it. And it's like a month away from being real. And yeah, so it's fantastic. I'm so excited to get into just all of this with you. And yeah, we'll start from the beginning. So very, very basic question, but why dentistry?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Nothing is basic about that. Okay, so why dentistry? Well, I owe my passion to my mom because I'm an immigrant. I'm from Egypt, so we came to the U.S. in '04, and just we didn't speak any English. The highest level of education of my parents were just high school. So as far as English goes, I was in the classes ELS, uh, English as a second language, I think it's called. So as I was learning English, I was translating to my mom when she went to all her doctor's appointments and all that stuff. So she went to a dentist appointment, and she had a really bad experience. And just being there and being in the middle of the conversation and being included as a legal guardian. I think I thought myself as a kid, but I was like the legal guardian because I had the responsibility to make sure that my translation is correct from Arabic or from English to Arabic. So just being there, and my mom had root canals, extractions, and just a treatment kind of fell through. There wasn't continuity of care. So just little me told my mom I'm going to be her dentist. And that was probably, I would say, so we've been in the US for coming up on 20 years. So that was probably like 16 years ago. So that was kind of the inception of the idea of Sameh becoming a dentist.
Nice.
Um, and yeah, and I've been working towards it ever since, every step of the way. The fulfilling the promise that I made to my mom started off by becoming a dental assistant in high school. So junior year of high school, we're like, hey, what classes do you want for your senior year of high school? And my grades were really good, so I ended up getting early dismissal, no, late arrival and early dismissal. So I got 2 out of the 6 periods, I think, that were kind of used towards the ROP program, which is a regional occupational program. It's kind of like a technical school where you go there during your senior year of high school and become a dental assistant. So it's a year-long program. So concurrently, I was in high school from the morning from 7:30 until noon, and then from noon until 5, I would be in my scrubs. So sometimes I even like during the exam days, either in high school or for the dental assistant program, I would show up to high school in scrubs, and I would get made fun of because just attire. But I kind of showed up with my mindset that, hey, this is just kind of like you're gonna be the mock of the group or whatever. You're gonna be made fun of, but one day you're gonna be well respected. So yeah, so just humble beginnings, I guess. And I also, so after I graduated as a dental assistant, I dabbled in the lab technician realm. So I became a lab technician. So I had jobs as a dental assistant, a lab technician, and I went to community college in the meantime. And then kind of just got all the prereqs, went to university after I got all my credits, and applied, failed, applied again, kind of failed. I had to push the envelope and kind of nag the dental schools until ASDO believed in me, and it was the only school that saw value in me and my journey and respected it. And here I am. 4 years after the acceptance.
That is that is one of the best stories I think I've ever heard in my entire life.
Short version.
It like almost, I'm not gonna lie, it almost brought tears to my eyes there a few times. I think what was the first thing that I thought was interesting was your mom having a bad experience at the dentist. What I'm finding, and I talk about this all the time. My dad's a dentist and has been for almost 43 years. It'll be 43 years in August. And he was telling me about some of the things they were taught back when he was in dental school in the 70s. And it was like, it's just horrific stuff. Like, the way that they would treat kids and stuff, just their mechanisms and manners of treatment. It was just so much different. It wasn't like it was purposefully bad. It wasn't as gentle and nice as it might be nowadays. And so I've found it interesting because I think there's a whole generation of people, or multiple generations perhaps, that have had bad experiences growing up and into adulthood with the dentist. And that's why we see so many people who, I mean, granted, it's not fun to go to the dentist necessarily for everybody, but we see a lot of people who are really, really they don't want to be there. So I think that's a really interesting thing for you as a young kid to see, like, okay, my mom's having this bad experience, but I'm playing this role of communicator in this scenario. And I want to be the guy I want to be the top guy. I want to be able to do this for everybody. So I think that's fantastic. Just the determination that I think it sounds like you went through in all those years and had to have to get from point A to point Z in all of this. And I can imagine it makes the ending of the whole education journey for you even that much more sweet. So that's fantastic. And it also makes me appreciate dentistry a little bit more because we have stories like yours that people really, really want to be in this profession. And it's easy for someone like me to go to school and complain. I got to study. I got to do this and that. I got all this lab work to do. You really sit back and realize, like, I am so blessed to be where I'm at. It's unbelievable. And there's so many people who want to be in the same spot. And things like that help me kind of keep it in perspective. So that's awesome. What was the process like for you when you weren't accepted that first time? Were you able to kind of just like bounce back into it? Was it super difficult? Did you question your decision there at that point?
Honestly, so this is funny that you asked that. So yesterday I was at a youth meeting at church, and they were talking about like the myth of a linear path, and how nothing in life is linear. And it kind of like gave me a lot of, that's honestly when it clicked that I actually graduated and became a dentist, is during that talk. And I applauded the presenter, the speaker, because it really, I think it was like personalized to me to kind of like make me reflect during the conversation that this has actually been a ups and downs, very consistent, and a lot of failures. So getting, I knew that I had a feeling that I wasn't going to get in the first time, but I still did it anyways. I did 4 years of undergrad at a community college because, again, finances and balancing the work and working 2 jobs and the school work to provide for my family. So that was kind of like the longest way into dental school, perhaps. And then I did neuroscience for 2 years at the University of Riverside here in California. And I picked neuroscience as a field or as a major because I knew that I'm going to be operating in the head. So everything that I've been doing was intentional, and I created safe mechanisms for myself. Hey, if I fail, I have something to fall back on to kind of get me back on the wagon and kind of keep moving forwards. So when I got into UCR, I knew I loved neuroscience. Like, it was like phenomenal. And at one point I was like, why dentistry? And I'm like, do I really need a $500,000 in debt? Or can I be like a neuroscientist and kind of like work with the brain and still working in the head and all that stuff? But I was like, you know what? I'm a man of my word. I'm going to keep my promise. I'm going to keep pushing forward. So it was kind of like the self-talk, the positive self-talk that I taught myself. And I applied the first cycle. This is, again, full honesty, full disclosure. I applied the first time and I was like, you know what? I'm the top shot, this and that. I'm a dental assistant, I'm a lab technician. I'm getting all the schools want me. I even applied to Texas schools because they only accepted one person out of state. And I was like, I'm gonna be that one person. I was a little bit ignorant at the time to kind of like think of myself too much and just rejected. I think it was kind of the message that I needed to receive, like, hey, kind of honor the humility, come back to earth, be grounded. It's okay to fail. If you fail, fail forward. Um, Keep on the route, keep on your plan A. Don't have backup plans because they're just distractions and all those YouTube, what do you call it, motivational speeches and all that stuff that I listened to kind of keep me on the path that I was going on. So yeah, applying first time kind of taught me a lot about myself as yes, I want it really badly. And I think if I got in the first time, now in retrospect, I would have not made it through dental school, knowing what I know now. So I think having 19 schools the first time that I applied to, all of them rejected me, not even a single interview, kind of put a lot of things into perspective. I put the DT on the back burner. I didn't think too much of it. I kind of like, hey, I'm just gonna take it and kind of do average, bare minimum. And my work experience and being in the field and working at like over 50 offices in the 8 years experience that I had when I was applying, I think that will be enough to give me in. So there's something to be said about kind of getting to know yourself and having setbacks because they just make for a sweeter comeback.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think all of that is a great exercise in like understanding the power of really committing to something. You know, I actually speak with a lot of the people that message me about dental school are older and into their careers a little bit and considering going back to school and trying for dentistry from the start. And it's an interesting question. I've never really known how to field that question because it hasn't been my experience. Mine's a little bit more of the traditional, you know, go to high school, go to college, go to dental school, that kind of deal, with its ups and downs a little bit. But I feel like the best way to answer that question is if you really want to do this, and it's hard to know if you truly want to do it, but if you want to commit to it wholeheartedly because you can do it. And I think you're a testament to that. There's a path for you. It just takes commitment and perseverance. It reminds me a lot of what I do with my content creation here with YouTube. Perhaps this is not a good comparison, but I've over the past 2 years, I've really committed to what I'm doing here on YouTube specifically. And it's something that feels like an addition to dentistry, kind of not a calling, but just sort of my life's work in a way where I have a passion for it and I love it and I want to continue doing it for as long as possible. So in making that decision, I've had to commit to it, and it can be difficult at times. At times you don't see that instantaneous reward. You don't get the instant gratification of achieving a great thing immediately, but over time you see slow growth and slow building. And we'll talk more about YouTube in a bit, but that's a good way to kind of look at it is it's this long process and you're going to go through ups and downs. And eventually there will be this man in front of me, graduated, a doctor, ready to go. And it's an exciting and just fascinating story. So for any of those out there who are listening, who are a little bit older and considering this idea, Sameh would probably be a good person to talk to. But I admire the journey. So it sounds like in that process, you were probably pretty ready to go for dental school when you got there, which was probably a bit of an advantage for you.
So I'm going to say something. A lot of people are not going to like to hear it, but dental school is the easy part. Getting through dental school, oh, you got no idea what you're getting yourself into. But all jokes aside, dental school is difficult. It's not for the faint of heart. Some people get in, and they have a higher calling, like, hey, this is not for me, and they pull out of the program ASAP. Some wait a year, some fail through dental school. Speaking from my personal experience, I nearly didn't make it, and that's kind of, we can talk about that in a little bit. But it's a lot to take in. But I think if you set yourself up for failures in order to have successes, I think that's something to, because I would hate for anybody to have their first life's failure in dental school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say first class to fail, like, oh my God, you've been an A student since high school, never failed a class, 4.5 GPA and all that good stuff. And you come to dental school and this is when you have your reality check. So I'm not saying like to slack off and fail on purpose, but it would be nice to experience that before you are $500,000 in debt.
Right.
And experience it back to back with failing and remediating multiple classes like I have. Which I think it's the first time that I got rejected, and a lot of the schools that said, hey, no, we don't see any value in you, or I fell through the filters because my stats weren't good enough. That was kind of like, hey, mentally, I need to be prepared to get into dental school and get through dental school.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I help pre-dents, this is not where I draw the line. No, I like, once you become a mentee of mine, it's like a lifelong commitment on my end. If for you, all you needed from me was to get into dental school, and you want to say deuces, by all means, that's you. But I'll be around. So I'm in the building relationships and friendships business because I think that's dentistry at its core. I'm not competitive. I'm not an A student. I'm not a gunner. I just do my due diligence, and if people want to kind of like tag along, yes, I'll teach you everything that I have learned over the years of experience, because again, it just makes you a better dentist. Because last thing I want to do is have the patient come in and say like, oh my God, I hate the dentist. Oh, no, not you. I just hate the idea of being a dentist. This is has a lot of bad connotation because my mom experienced that. And I hated the dentist for a long while. But I'm like, instead of having that hate and the negative energy, why don't I be the start of a change to help kind of change the mindset and the approach that new minds like yourself and myself are kind of getting into dental school. I want to make sure that these incoming dentists or soon to be dentists are actually good dentists, not just qualified, because the patient will not know if you did a good or a bad class too. All they care about is if you made them feel great. The shots were painless. There wasn't any like high occlusion, but as far as like the aesthetic things, that's kind of like the cherry on top. I'm not saying practice bad dentistry by any means, but it's the people's aspects of things. It's a good bedside manners that dental school doesn't really teach you, and it's something, it's either you have or you don't. But if you don't have it, make sure you are putting in the effort to talk to people like myself and you, and people that actually care and want to see a change in the profession for the better. Like, hey, how do you approach this difficult patient? Or it's effort. Effort goes a long way in this profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you talk about failure a little bit, because everybody is going to fail in dental school. Like, it literally is. Everybody goes in and they think, I'm a straight A student, like you just said, and I've been doing this or whatever. Everybody's going to fail. For some people, it might be one practical. That's the only thing they ever fail. But you're going to fail in some way, shape, or form in dental school. And I remember I'm sort of like what you were describing. I'm not even close to a straight A student anymore. It used to be back when it was really necessary that I was. Now it's sort of just like, make it through, learn as much as possible. For me, the big emphasis has always been the clinical side of dental school. So like, I want to know what I'm doing from a clinical perspective, because that's what we're going to be doing every day, of course. So I always thought like, I would say I'm like slightly above average clinically, and I'm not going to be someone who struggles and fails or anything. Oh, I've failed my fair share of practicals. I failed operative practicals, endo practicals, come really close in certain fixed and removable projects. It's just going to happen. And I think it's a good lesson for dentistry in general, because dentistry is something that is, you as the clinician, you're always evolving in your own abilities. And it takes sort of trial and error through things to not even get to be a perfect clinician, but to get to be someone that your patients can 100% trust clinically. All of the things you're talking about outside of that, the way that you build relationships, the way that you communicate, those things are separate, of course, and extremely important, vital. But from a clinical perspective, it takes trial and error. It takes failure, perhaps for many years, even into your career, to get to that point where you really feel confident. And even when you've been doing it for many, many years, there are still things that will get you, and that will confuse you, and that will stump you, and just teeth that will be unbelievable. And you're like, I don't understand what's going on here. It's just part of it. Of course, I don't speak from personal experience there, speaking with older dentists. But yeah, talk me through you mentioned the mentorship, and I want to get into that a little bit. Talk me through that.
So mentorship. Oh, okay. So big talking a little bit about what you said about failure is, so my general rule for the D1, because they come up to me and are like, oh my God, your Instagram, I've been following you, help me and all that good stuff. And I was like, all right, here you are in front of me, talking in person, finally, if I haven't met you before. And I'm like, if I give you one piece of advice, is if you fail at one thing, if you fail at one thing, not both things. Meaning if you fail in the didactic aspect of dental school, fail in the didactic only. Don't fail in didactic and the clinical or the sim clinic aspect of things. Speaking from my own experience at ASDO, if you end up failing both, fail here and here, fail this module, that module, then for me, kind of putting my mind on the administration, kind of people behind the scenes, behind the curtain, I'm like, okay, this student is not good didactically and they're not good clinically. So why should we keep them? And I'm like, it doesn't take a genius to think that through. I'm just, because again, you got nothing to show for. And maybe, hey, dentistry is not your gift. And I'm not saying this to put anybody down, but it's put in effort 100% in both aspects. But if you fail, or if you quote unquote suck in one thing, not both. So let's say didactically, I'm the worst test taker. The standardized test sucks. I took the DT 3 times. All right. So I hate standardized tests. But for me, I know didactically, and our school first year, our D1 year was grade system and ranking. But after that, D2 year and onwards, it was pass fail. So we're the first class that experienced the switch mid during the middle of the 4 years. So for me, I was like, you know what? All I need to do is get a passing grade and kind of transition into the clinic. So it's not that I neglected the didactic aspects of things, but it wasn't a top priority, because even when it was a grade system, I was ranked like towards the bottom of the class, which for me, I didn't really care, because I'm like, I knew when it comes to bedside manners and working on the patient, I have so much to offer compared to other people. And for me, I never really compare myself to other people, but I knew that what I have to offer is unique in its way, because it's like, hey, I'm working on you and you're my mom. How am I going to treat you? Because it takes me back to why I started this. And that kind of has been my guiding compass throughout this entire journey. Like, hey, I'm working on you and you are my mom. What would I do differently? I wouldn't do anything differently, because if I wanted a dentist to treat my mom, this is how I wanted them to treat my mom. I want it to be a perfect experience. So for the advice about the failures, kind of set yourself up for success, but be okay with failing through or towards that success. Did I answer your question, or am I?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
so you just communicate a lot with pre-dental students is essentially, and dental
Yes.
students, right?
So both. So I kind of like started off as pre-dents because I didn't have enough. Like as a D1, I got nothing to really to offer because my cohort is with me. So my
Right.
experience is the same as theirs. So who can I help? That is kind of still the concept like, hey, one person below you, or not below you for lack of a better word, but kind of like is a step behind you and someone that's a step ahead. So always have both mentee mentor relationship, and you kind of be monkey in the middle, kind of getting help from there, getting help from there. And for me, having that setup kind of allowed me to speak what I'm doing into existence and have people look up to me. And having that kind of brings me joy, but also kind of validates the reason of what I'm doing. Is like, hey, people see potential in me and people have faith in me and people look up to me. It adds a lot of pressure, trust me. And I'm like, okay, like I can't let all these people down that I'm helping, because if I go down, maybe they're gonna be kind of deter their path. And I'm like, I can't have that on my conscience.
Mm-hmm.
So the mentorship, it all started with one of my mentors that is no longer with us, Dr. Jeffrey Eden, who used to be an instructor at UCSF. So he passed away last year due to COVID complications, and he gave me the quote when I went and I met him during the pre-dental journey with my pre-dental club at UCR. And he said the quote was, "When you make it to the top, make sure you send the elevator back down." So for me, that kind of has been my motto since I met him and since he told me these words. And it's always to pay it forward. Hence the YouTube channel and the name and kind of my mission. It's based on a book. Actually, I read it once, but I'm still kind of like reading it. Pay It Forward by Catherine Ryan Hyde. And they also made a movie starring Kevin Spacey. So I don't know if you
Nice.
watched it. Have you watched it?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's a good movie. So, and it's kind of it's crazy because I believe in full circles. So
Mm.
that movie, I watched it in middle school, and it was one of the first movies that they rolled in. I don't know, how old are you?
25.
25. Okay. So did you have the big TVs on the roller skates and all that stuff?
Yes.
Okay, so you're not that young then. Okay, so I
Dude,
can use
it was great whenever they would roll it in to class and you were
when they
like,
roll it in,
yes.
the movie time. Where's the popcorn at? So I watched that. I think it was in sixth grade or seventh grade, and we watched that movie. And I think it was like social studies or something like that. And that movie literally made me cry in the class because it's just it's being human at its core, and it's kind of like your mission and what you stand for, helping people. Hey, I'm gonna help you, and I'm not looking for anything in return. And all I ask you, and that's what I tell all of the people that I'm mentoring, and I'm not just mentoring pre-dental students, I'm mentoring pre-health in general, so people for PT, pre-farm, or whatever. If I can provide, because again, it's you're applying for a graduate program, it's a little bit of the same. As far as like looking over personal statements and all that stuff, I told them, I'm like, hey, I'm taking 4 hours to review your personal statement or help you craft it. Out of my day, all I ask for you is to help someone else get in. Like it's not like it's now you're gonna break even, and that's all I'm asking for. The bare minimum is break even. Go help someone else.
Yeah.
That's it. You
Yeah.
don't have to gift me. You don't have to Venmo me this or that. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just asking to, hey, spread some positivity, and that's it.
Yeah.
Moving on
Uh,
to the next person.
my guy's truly over here just spitting facts. Just absolutely. I don't even know what to say. You got me stumped. No, but I do think I think that that's been my experience too with dental school is, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that I started the YouTube channel and Instagram and stuff, and so I have this direct pipeline into the pre-dental experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are people who can go into dental school and just never look back, just never communicate back, and that's totally fine, I think. But with what we do, we constantly interact with pre-dental students, which keeps us grounded, and it's so true. I think I had a day very recently when I spoke with a pre-dent for a while, and then went to the clinic and learned from a D4 in the same day. And so I was like, went from being the teacher to being the student again, back to back. And it was that weird feeling like you describe of being in the middle. But you appreciate both aspects because in one sense, you are now the person that's being looked up to. And you remember looking up to others when you were like a pre-dental student, for example, but you still are grounded in the fact that you're still a dental student. You still don't know everything. You know, you still have a lot to learn, and there are people ahead of you, in front of you, that have a lot to give back to you. So it's actually, I think there's a lot of, if you really sit back and reflect on dental school as a concept, it's interesting. I think it's not more interesting, but there's just so much to it. And there's a lot of these like life lessons that you learn if you sit back and reflect about just the nature of where you're at. Because it's a very formative 4 years. And there are so many things that you can learn about yourself and things that you can take away from it like that, that perhaps you wouldn't get if you just got out of school and went straight into the workforce, like immediately, and just started dealing with things like that. So there's so much to learn, but
So speaking of the learning, so Dr. Eden kind of threw that term around, lifelong learner. And I didn't understand it when he said it, but the more I help people, the more I get help, because that is a whole different ball game. I know a lot of people, classmates and people at other programs that I'm helping, they don't know how to ask for help. Or they don't. I think it's their ego that's getting in the way. They just don't ask for help. They're like, "Hey, I'm just gonna wing it." And I'm like, in life, you can only wing it so much before it catches up to you. So now I'm like, if you need help, ask. And I have students from UCLA, USC, people that I never met, but they've been following me. They send me their preps, their crown preps, their operative, and hey, what do you think of my English and what can I fix? Am I holding the handpiece wrong? What should I do? And I'm like, hey, and once it's kind of a recurring thing. And now at that point, hey, we're colleagues where I feel comfortable giving them my number. Hey, you can FaceTime me, you can do this, you can call me, and I'll be more than happy to help. Just don't abuse it. But yeah, it's because again, now it takes me back to, hey, this is what an ideal prep looks like. And now I have a patient the next day, I'm doing a 3-unit bridge on, and I literally just helped Steven yesterday with his pros competency, giving him feedback. It clicks.
Right.
It kind of brings you back and makes you appreciate the humble beginnings that you went through.
Yeah.
In dental school.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're the guy that I should be in terms of like communicating with people on Instagram and stuff. I just am not. I think I got to a point where, and I'm not famous or anything, but I got to a point where there was a lot of DMs and I got very overwhelmed with it and I just stopped looking at them. Same and here. That's really bad. But like I have, so, you know, there's dental school, which takes up an absolute boatload of time. YouTube takes up all the rest of my free time essentially. And then I have a very rich life with friends and family that I value very much. And so there just wasn't like, I felt for me, a lot of the questions weren't just a simple, boom, here's your answer. A lot of them were like, I felt that they needed a lot of effort and a lot of time to answer properly. And some of them were so open-ended that I just felt like I don't know where to begin. And it would just be a long process of mentorship to even begin. And it just was overwhelming, honestly. And so I'm terrible at responding to DMs. I hate that I'm like that. And it's something that, speaking to you, like I want to go in and just respond to a bunch of them because there's a lot of people out there who are looking for help. But if you don't get in touch with me, try this guy right here because it sounds like he's going to be a lot more diligent with it.
So this is actually funny because that same person at one of the dental schools that messaged me, they're like, okay, what's your feedback? And then they send me kind of their own self-evaluation of their prep. And I'm sitting over here reading and I'm typing and I'm like, you know what? I selected all and I erased everything that I'm typing and I hit record and I send them a voice memo.
Yeah.
2 voice memos, 1 minute each. And I'm like, all right, that's all I have to say. This is the feedback. It's just easier. So you think of other ways like, hey, it's a form of communication. Now they have it saved instead of like the writing and all that stuff. The other thing is, speaking of, because I did that the first 2 years, and it's kind of this is kind of the good thing that came out of COVID, is me starting my YouTube channel and starting creating content, because I kept getting the frequently asked questions.
Right.
Like, hey, what's the process? What's your journey? And this and that. So I literally got a big post-it note, one of those sheets or boards of post-it note paper, and I started just, hey, this is the steps that I took into getting into dental school. And I started, okay, I'm going to create a video and I'm going to invite that person. I'm going to create a video and invite that person, this and that. And it became this entire schematic way of, hey, this is how I'm going to create content. You asked me a question about, hey, who should I ask to write me a personal statement or a letter of recommendation? Here is a video for it. Watch it. Yep. And here is a playlist. Watch it. Yeah. How about personal statement? I'm like, I will be able to provide you an hour of feedback or whatever, how much ever, depends on how busy I am, or 30 minutes or whatever of time. But I'm like, a prerequisite for my time is you got to put in the time and watch my videos.
Right.
I'm like, watch my videos, kind of all the content is there, all the information that I have to say, and the feedback is there. It's not just mine, it's mine and other dental students that are tuning in and kind of giving their own perspective. And because again, everyone that's been on the channel has their own different journey and their own different ethnic background, socioeconomic background, and all that good stuff. So that's why I kind of diversify the people that I bring on board on my channel. So that way they speak for everybody. So no pre-dental student kind of feels like, hey, and a lot of like some people that became really good friends I haven't even met in person found me on YouTube, and now we exchange number, and I've been helping them for like the past 3 years, and they got into dental school. And
that's awesome.
Dude, this, and actually one of them, Peter George from Michigan, he ended up, he's like, dude, like I'm getting in, and he's like, I got in, I want to be on your channel and I want to pay it forward. And I'm like, dude, heck yeah. And I was like, so I brought him on board, and then his application process, like the experiences, I added him as a collaborator with Dental Life Pay It Forward mission. And I kind of like, hey, write a little piece on how you helped me with my channel.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes full circle. And now he's a dental student.
So this is the Pay It Forward playlist on your channel.
Yes, sir.
And man, it's like, it's just a different level, I think, of content creation. It's so driven. So
I'm guilty of something. So I recorded 3 videos. I started another mini series about the DT. So all that's up there is the dental school application, the ADS application.
Yeah.
So all the information that you need from A to Z, it's there.
Nice.
I started a series. I recorded 3 videos. That's probably coming up on a year. It's living somewhere on one of my hard drives.
Right.
Haven't got a chance to edit it. Haven't got a chance to release it. And I'm sitting on it, because if I release it, people are like, okay, how about like the reading comprehension section?
Right.
When are I release that? And I'm going to start getting DMs. I'm like, if I don't have the entire thing recorded and release them on a weekly basis, because my YouTube algorithm is already jacked up. It's already messed up, because I was like, hey, I can't make videos anymore for the time being.
Right.
And that's the thing with just being consistent or being inconsistent in my case, because just life happens. I failed classes, the rotations that I've been having with dental school, going to different states, doing the 1-month rotations, externships, and all that stuff. It just, life has been busy, but I've been redirecting people to my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have like a lot of followers or likes or whatever. And it's kind of like I'm saying, like it's a very low key, humble page. And I would like for it to reach more people. I just don't know how I can do that, because we invested a lot, like my team and I invested a lot of time in it, and I literally sat in the chair for so many hours, because again, it's kind of like how I have all the videos I have, and I see it with your content too. You're very specific with your editing process and like your pictures. It's the what do you call it? It's the thematic approach that you're giving. And I'm like, I can't just give that to an intern and have him like, hey, edit my
Right.
videos and post them.
Right.
It's because it takes away the effort that I'm putting to help other people. And
Yeah.
I enjoy that a lot. It just I have to find out or carve out time in my day to, so that's something that's in the pipeline. It will be released.
Yeah. It's very difficult. Especially in the very, very beginning. And I'm still consider myself to be in the very beginning of content creation on YouTube. It's unfortunate because YouTube rewards you for pumping out content, where in reality, you can feel like the content that you're creating, and you can know that the content you're creating is actually valuable and impactful and actually meaningful. And you'd like for it to reach every member of your target demographic, but it's not going to, because that's the way YouTube works, which is very unfortunate, right? Like there's been many times when I've felt like, okay, this particular video like came straight from the heart, but like only a couple hundred people might see it. Which is great, by the way. Like that's a couple hundred people out of would have been nobody if I hadn't made it in the first place. But at the same time, you're not only do you feel that it's a great message and it's super important to you and you think others could benefit from it, but you're also putting a lot of time and effort into it. You're pouring time, energy, effort, heart, soul into it. So that is, I think, interestingly, like for me, because the biggest advice that I always give about YouTube that I've learned over the past couple of years is I haven't had the blow up success that some people have. Like I've never posted a video and just seen it like skyrocket. It's literally never happened. For me, it's always just been a steady, gradual growth. Every day it's a couple more people, which is great. But what that means is, for me, it's been a consistency thing and just like literally being 100% dedicated to getting a video every week and then watching it over time grow. And so for me, it's been interesting, but also rewarding to see that process actually play out. But that's my only real advice with it, is just like, I've committed to it. Like I had this inward dialogue conversation with myself last year when I kind of came back to it after taking a break. And I said, with this inner conversation, if you're going to do this, commit to it, like fully commit to it. And I had my reservations, I had the thoughts of, how are my peers going to see it? Are they going to think it's weird? Like, is it going to be strange if I only have 100 followers and I'm trying to act like I'm some sort of authority or whatever? I had to fight through all of that. I had to fight through, like, do I want to continue putting time into this? Is it worth it? Is it worth my time? And I sort of just powered through all those feelings and just kept creating. Now I'm to the point where I almost feel like I owe it to the past version of myself who put in all that time, all those late nights, staying up super late, editing, all of that. I owe it to that person to continue doing it and to see where it can go, not from like a financial perspective or a rule the world perspective, but just like what you described there. It's like, if you create meaningful content, you want people to see it because you want the opportunity to impact people positively with the things that you've learned. And so that's sort of the motivation for me with it moving forward, is like, I think that the thing has a potential to reach a lot of people. And so I'm going to keep doing it, keep pushing. The beauty of it, what you're just describing, is the hardest part about it is just starting and getting something out there. But once you've done that, it gets a little bit easier over time to just continue adding to the portfolio that you've already built. Exactly. So there should never on your end be a feeling of, that you're discouraged because you haven't reached a certain number of subscribers. I know you don't feel that, but
so life hits and you just gotta kind of head back.
Yeah.
So for me, like I wouldn't be. It's a disservice for me to think about the views, the subscribers, and all that.
Absolutely.
Stuff. And it's not my mission. And again, like, why am I in dentistry to begin with? Is it for the money? I'm more than $500,000 in debt, man. It's not definitely, like, the money is just going to be a byproduct of the gift that I have been given, and I worked so hard to kind of perfect, and I continued on perfecting. So for me, it's not about the analytical aspects of
Absolutely.
things. I was talking to one of my spiritual leaders, and They told me something that kind of made it all like come together. They were like, you are going to be noticed when your time is right. You're
Mm.
going to be acknowledged for your hard work when your time, like you're going to come to fame or whatever you want to call it, when the time is right. You just kind of keep yourself grounded in reality and the work that you do, and with time your the spotlight is going to be on you. And
Mm.
maybe that's when you're on your deathbed, like God forbids, or like when you're 80 or whatever. But your time will eventually come. But
Mm.
if you're always going to strive, like, hey, when am I going to hit the 1K subscribers or whatever, you're going to always fall short
Yeah.
because you are setting, I wouldn't say unrealistic expectations, but you're just setting quotas for yourself. And that's something that I have seen in the business side of things, the dental, the pharmacy, the all big corporations and all that stuff. They all always set like the metrics. It's always the numbers, and I'm like, that's not really dentistry. So, and I'm like, a lot of people fall victim to the metrics. And I'm like, for me, our dental school changed their metrics to pass fail. So now it's not just, hey, I'm going to be an A student. Hey, I'm going to pass this class. I'm going to give it all I got and move on to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And it moves on. And I'm like, I appreciate that more because it takes off the burden of being competitive with your peers, of just losing countless hours of sleep and getting like a or an A minus. And hey, I didn't reach the A that I wanted, but I got an A minus. Like, what the heck? What should I do next for the next class? So the metric system, I'm always haven't been a numbers person. I always been like, hey, this is kind of what I want, and this is how I'm gonna get it, and kind of set realistic expectations for myself.
Yeah.
And if you start something, finish it.
Yep.
And if it's something like YouTube, like I don't see any limit or any finish line for you or I.
Right.
It's just something that's continuous. So hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking a kind of a break or whatever, and I'm gonna hop back on it, and I'm gonna be like I have content that I created, PowerPoints, and a lot of stuff that this is you kind of getting the spilling the tea for you here on your channel. Content for the CDCA, for the boards, for both pros, endo, and for the operative and the perio. Content in the manual, stuff that I read, the notes that I did to help other people. But
Yeah.
these are videos that will be made at one point in the future. It's just I never got around to it. I
Mm.
would like to do, because again, I went in these exams, I read the manual, kind of look over all my rubrics, all the textbooks that we have for that module, and like let's go in and take the exam. So I want to kind of make it a little bit easier, for lack of a better word, for incoming students, to kind of like, hey, I hope this helps.
For sure. I look forward to seeing it. Yeah.
One day soon.
Yeah, man. I think metrics are great and they're also very dangerous. Like for me, I'll give you a good example and a bad example. A good example of metrics working in my favor were using metrics as motivation to improve my fitness. So the way that I got into, and I've always been like an athletic person, but the way I got back into it after years of sort of being dormant was I started tracking my runs. I started tracking the distance that I was running, how fast, and it became sort of like a game for me. It was like, can I go faster? Can I go a little bit further than last time? And how many miles can I go this month? And before I knew it, I was like obsessed with running, and it was like, not obsessed, but like, that's a good thing to be really invested and devoted to. My health improved drastically. And so that was using metrics and numbers and goals to your advantage out of a sense of motivation. But something like a bad example is that you could use a lot of things. Finances, you could use YouTube subscribers. I mean, I spent a lot of time in that pre 1,000 subscriber window. And it's very easy to fall into the, once I have 1,000, I'm going to feel fulfilled. I'm going to feel like I accomplished a whole lot. You get to 1,000, you're like, okay, so 5,000. And now I'm at almost 8, and it's like, okay, 10. And it never ends. That never ends. There's never an ending to that. It's the same with money. It's the same with possessions, anything physical in this world. They just don't ever end up fulfilling you. It's these other things, that these intangibles that we're discussing, they don't seem to get as much play at times, but those are the things that end up actually making you feel something.
Speaking of that, so the talk that we had at the youth meeting yesterday at church, the speaker was talking about why nonprofits fail more than for-profit organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they don't have any metrics, because for-profit organizations, always the money. Mm-hmm. The money is the metrics. But for nonprofit, they need to come up with systematic ways to measure their growth, whether it's quarterly, annually, whatever. And I was like, holy cow. And I'm like, Dental Life. And I'm like, my YouTube channel, that's technically a nonprofit, because again, I'm not really making money like YouTube right. and all that stuff. But I thought about it and I was like, what is my metrics? And that's something that I need to kind of sit down and look at, because I think once I find that out, that would be kind of like, hey, this is my motivation and this is kind of what I'm going to be using to measure the quality and the consistency of the content that I put out.
Yep.
So I'm like, wow, it kind of put a lot of things into perspective.
Yeah, I think it's great. You could come up with your own analytics system for, instead of using YouTube Studio, you can use Sameh Studio.
Studios.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit. I do want to talk about just because you're at like a crossroads right now with your career. Obviously, you just graduated school, so I want to hear about what's next from a dentistry perspective for you, like where you're going to be going, what you're going to be doing, the practice and everything like that.
So, again, you're getting a lot of firsts, man. This is kind of like
I'm spilling all the tea.
Yeah, man. I'm giving you all the beans, man. Spilling all the beans. All right, cool.
I'm honored.
So you heard it here first, y'all. All right. But so I'm opening up my own practice. I think it's the most logical thing to do with the work that I have put forward over these years, working for private practices, working for DSOs, working for as a lab technician, working at so many different offices, different doctors, different demographics, doctors that went to different schools, doctors that are international dentists and then came here, got their degree from the US. So I diversified my pre-dental school experience intentionally, because I'm like, hey, this is kind of, hopefully I'm setting myself up for that point. Once I graduate, I want to be, no, I'm not saying I'm like, I have a business degree or anything. I don't know anything about business, but hey, I know the network that I have. I know the people that are looking out for me. These are people that I met along the way, and these are the doors that I'm opening up with having my dental blog, my YouTube channel. These are mentors that I'm kind of like-minded people that are kind of coming along my path. That now we're friends, and now they're like, hey, once I share this information with them, they're like, dude, let's freaking go. And they're like, if it's anybody that's gonna do it, it's you. Like, why wouldn't you do it? That's the question. And I was hesitant about it at the beginning. But after kind of praying about it and just kind of sitting down, looking at the numbers, looking at like how much in depth I will be opening up my own practice. But I believe in the quality of work that I do, in the dentistry that I do. I believe in the mission. I believe in the vision. I believe in the concept of every patient that's going to be in the chair is going to be my mom. And I'm like, I think that these are intangibles. These are things that you can't add a price on. These are things that I feel like my talents and my gifts that I have acquired over the years are going to be not used to their full potential if I give them to someone else that will misuse them. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm...
No, absolutely.
That's kind of like the thought process that went on in my head. And that's why I was like, you know what? And just being in dental school, every dental school is a little bit different. Every dental school has their own like drama or whatever, like political things, and like even like just as a profession, every profession has their own kind of like, hey, don't do this, this is kind of bad, go with this company, go with this brand, do this, do that. I i want to use my knowledge that I have acquired over the years, that I'm still kind of investing and learning, being a lifelong learner, to make these calls myself, without, because again, if I fail, I'm holding myself accountable for my
Right.
failures. I don't want to be like blaming Steven for kind of like, hey, you told me to do that. No, I'm not that type of person. I'll never be that type of person. I want to kind of like, for lack of a better word, call the shots and be responsible for the outcome. Then that will mean, if it's a success, great. On to the next success,
Yeah.
the next failure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the what's next for me. So it's something that I've been working on for the past year. And I had really good mentors, really good opportunities. Some of them required me to move out of California, which was kind of like a no to me, because again, I've been out of California for 4 years. Now it's kind of time to come home. Some of them are in a like, so I'm in SoCal, like Riverside area. Some of them were like in Northern California, like San Francisco Bay Area or Fresno area. So I'm like, so those were kind of like, well, I'm gonna be in California still, but it's gonna be far. I'm not gonna see my family unless like it's the weekends. So that kind of didn't really fit what I wanted to do. I wanted to be home. I wanted to be with family. I've been away for a long time, and my parents, I'm like, that's the thing about life, man. Like, you're 26, I'm 29. The older you get, the older your parents age proportionally.
Right.
So I'm like, that's something like, hey, the money, the hustle, and all that stuff, you're gonna have your life ahead of you, but your parents are also aging. So I want to maximize the time that I have to spend with them as much as possible. So that's kind of a top priority that I don't think any company or anyone can put a price tag on, because it's just
Right.
it's something that's not gonna be replaced ever.
Yeah.
Um, so um, uh, so I had two opportunities. One of them was a de novo practice, starting a dental practice from scratch, and one of them is an acquisition practice, buying it and buying the goodwill of that practice. I'm still kind of in the middle of both, but I know one of them will be it. The other will be kind of like, hey, this is kind of my side hustle, and maybe in a year or two, maybe kind of buy that one out too. You never know. Maybe I'll fail. Maybe I'll kind of go back and work for someone else if that fails.
Right.
But again, that's kind of, I'm at fault if that happens.
Right.
I'm holding myself responsible for it. But hey, what if both of them succeed? What if one succeeds and one breeds the other, or the third? Or, you get what I'm saying? Like, it's just that what if I'm consistent, if my track history has proved something, that I'm not someone that just gives up easily.
Yeah.
And I have kind of like the credit history. That is my credit history.
Yeah.
I've been knocked down, almost didn't make it through dental school, but I got back up and here I am. So, and another thing, the reason why I'm kind of coming back to California, and kind of the push to open up a practice. My brother just got accepted to ASDO. So I'm blue scrubs. I just graduated. So he's gonna be going to Arizona. So we're flip flopping. So he was taking care of my parents while I was gone, and now I'm back here taking care of them while he's gone for 4 years. So in 4 years, once my brother Habib graduates, we'll see where I'm at. If he wants to join whatever I got going on, by all means, hop on board. If you want to start your own thing, feel free, be your own man. And that's kind of like, I open the doors, and that's what I'm saying, like the pre-dental journey that that people get on and kind of get introduced to me, whether through other people like you or Teham, or like other like referrals, or just through my channel. Um, uh, these are people that kind of like, some of them stay in touch, some of them get in and they're like, okay, your services have been used. We no longer kind of got reason to kind of keep in touch with you, and they kind of felt, to each their own. I'm not gonna hold anybody accountable. I
Right.
did my due diligence. I helped you, or you helped yourself, or whatever you got in. if you want to keep that friendship or that relationship going, the door is open.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, because at first when I started this, and I was like, how dare you? You don't like. I started kind of questioning people and how come they didn't keep in touch and all that stuff. And I'm like, dude, this is not why I'm doing this. I'm doing it so I can like, hey, I help you move on to the next person. It's not about you. It's about me and what I have to offer to the collective general public and dental community. So I don't get caught up on like, hey, this person left or whatever. Hey, peace out. I'll see you whenever you need help again with something else. But yeah, whatever culture or office I'm gonna be doing, it's very hard. I don't know if you talked to your dad or your dad expressed his feelings about finding employees. It's so difficult, especially dental assistants. Very high turnover rate. So for me, I talked to dental assistant schools, programs in the area, ROP programs that I went to, and I'm like, hey, I'm opening up a practice. I want your finest students, and I'll pay them top dollar because again, I'm not a cheap, you know what, like I've been through it. I've been a dental assistant, and I know how like they're the bloodline of your office.
Yep.
So it's the culture that I'm building. And also like, hey, you're graduating from, let's say, Pomona, and you want to be in the area and you want to come and work, not for me, with me. My success will be your success. We'll see where that goes. So it's not just like, hey, I'm going to get you into dental school, or I'm going to help you get into dental school, or I'm going to help you get through dental school. It's what's after that.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many chords of mine are being struck right now. Anybody that knows me well would probably hear this conversation. Like my parents listen to all of these. They're going to listen to this and say, this guy sounds a lot like Steven, because this is the same stuff that I dream about and think about all the time. I have these huge goals and aspirations, not for financial gain or fame or anything like that, but just to build something special that can last for a lifetime and be a legacy that can impact people every single day. And I think that's the beauty. That's one of the beauties of dentistry. Yeah. Hearing you commit to going out and trying it on your own. It's one of the reasons why we say we want to go into dentistry, is because we have that opportunity. It's certainly scary, but you have that chance. I was talking to one of my best friends today, and he has sort of found himself in a really good position. He's worked his way up in a company and has a lot of power decision making right now. And his older brother actually just decided to work for him, which I found that very interesting. And I was like, good for him. You know, that it takes probably a bit of an ego hit to work for your younger brother and to fully commit to that. And he said, well, my brother told me that he would rather devote his life's work to someone that he loves and knows will appreciate it, rather than somebody else who is completely, who knows, you're not related. They don't know you or care about you to that level. And you never know if they're just going to use you for a certain number of years and drop you off. And I said, well, I didn't look at that way, but it makes a lot of sense. And I think that they're going to have a lot of success working together. So that's a wonderful thing.
So speaking on that, so it took me a lot to kind of come to this point of realizing that I'm okay to be used, but I'm not okay to be abused. Right. And kind of it's that fine line and where you set your boundaries as a mentor for your mentee. And hey, like, yes, we're going to be cordial. Yes, we're going to have realistic expectations, but I'm not going to be a doormat in the process. Mm-hmm. And I feel like now that I'm a doctor and all that stuff, it's, hey, that doesn't change anything. If you knew me beforehand and like, hey, bro, and all that stuff, I'm still okay with that. I'm not like overnight I became like sensational. I became a doctor. They're just titles at the end of the day. And it's that humility that comes with this profession. You can be as egotistical as you want to be in dentistry, or you're going to be as humble as you want to be in dentistry. And I think it's the humility aspect of our profession. It opens up a lot of doors that nobody likes an egotistical person or a what's called kind of like Tony Stark personality. Are you an Avenger?
Narcissistic?
Nah, that's the word. Narcissist. Yeah. So nobody likes a narcissist. But yeah, man, like Tony Stark has a lot of like good um, characteristics and traits, but he also has a lot of characteristics that you should stay away from. And again, he's a billionaire. I'm like, there's a lot to be kind of said about that fictional character, in the person that you aspire to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
I think you and I could probably talk for a couple years.
Oh
straight.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a part 2 invite coming up.
I think there's a lot of parts. One thing that this is ridiculous, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it because you're the type of guy that would appreciate this. Yeah. One thing that I have like big goals and aspirations for my career, as I said a second ago. One thing that I would love to do is build a new office someday. We have a lot of land at the practice where my dad is at. There's a lot of potential for growth, both in the practice and physically for a new building and stuff. So that's something that like I dream of. If it's feasible and necessary, then we'll do it. But if I do that, I'm going to build a podcast studio, and I'm going to invite you here in 2020. It's June 1st, 2022. I'm inviting you to the podcast studio when it gets built, and it could be that could be 10 years from now. But you know what?
I will be there.
I want to hear about how all of this goes. I think it's fantastic that we were able to sit down and do this when both of us are at a very, like, this is a very poetic moment because you're about to start practicing dentistry and I'm about to start treating patients in the clinic, and we're sort of at crossroads, but there's so much potential and so many great untapped things that I think will come in the future.
I'm going to share something. All right. So speaking of like failures, I know we touched up on it, but failures doesn't stop. Like there's no expiration date for failure. All right. So for me, all of my clinic years, the first 2 years of dental school, never failed anything. Nice. Clinical, anything hands-on, top notch. All right. But didactically, failed 3 classes, was on probation so many times, and all that good stuff. All right. Came to clinic, killed it. The implants, probably placed 15 implants my 4th year. And again, I built up a relationship with the perio team. 3rd year, did probably like 50 cases, like treatment planning, designing, doing all the surgical guides, all that stuff, and had like the surgeons do it or the 4th year students do it and all that stuff. And it's not a graduation requirement. So there's people that graduate with 0 implant placement. So for me, I built that relationship knowing that 4th year, it's showtime. So I went to that surgeon and I was like, so been working with you on so many cases. Now I'm on 4th year. Can I place an implant? And I was like, best case scenario? He says, oh, heck yeah. Worst case scenario? Hell no. All right. It's, hey, 50-50. But if I didn't ask, then we'll never know. Right. All right. So he's like, you know what? I knew you for how many ever years, the 3 years that you've been here. He's like, I knew that you were going to come and ask, but he's like, I wasn't going to kind of like come and tell you like, hey, do you want to do this?
Right.
You need to show initiative and your willingness that you want to, hey, this is something that I want to learn. This is something that I'm passionate about. And they were like, we see you, we recognize you, that you're putting in the hours, overtime, staying after hours, treatment planning, the cases and all that stuff. One patient I placed 6 implants on.
Wow. 2
in every quadrant.
Yeah.
And that was literally the week before graduation that I placed the 3 on the left side. Wow. And when I was on rotation, I placed them. He was healing when I was on rotation, or she was healing when I was on rotation. Came back, placed the rest, and then now graduated. So that was all the coordination. And I had a timeline like, okay, this is how long it's going to take to heal. So patient can eat on one side. I come back before graduation. I account for all of this timeline. So as far as like treatment planning, because again, my experience and working for like DSOs and privates and this and that, I look at the bigger picture and I'm like, okay, scheduling, it's a gift. And you have to know the steps. You have to know how to coordinate all that with the front office and the assistants and the treatment planning and you yourself as a practitioner. But probably so 3 weeks or 4 weeks before graduation, The only competency that I had left. So my thing was like, hey, by December, I want to get all the competencies done, and I got most of them done because I wanted the next 5 months to be a breeze. Okay, didn't find any class two patients cases, so I was like, dang it, because that was my goal, and I was like, oh my god, again, kind of feeding your ego, like you're one of the first few in your cohort to
Right.
kind of like finish all the competencies ahead of everybody. But I was like, you know what? When it happens, it happens. I'm gonna graduate. I'm just gonna need to make sure that it's done before graduation. So I finally did it, and that was probably in April for the first time. I failed the class two competency, and it was around the same time that we're doing the CDCA, and that was the first clinical or hands-on thing that I failed, and I failed it on a real patient.
Yep.
Whew, I didn't take that lightly.
Yeah.
I did not take that lightly, brother. And I was like, how is this possible? I never happened to me. Like my clinical skills are top notch, but I studied the case and I was like, where did it go wrong, and why did I fail? So it was part of it was poor diagnosing, and not just diagnosing, but more of a case acceptance
Right.
for a competency. The lesion was cervical.
Mm.
So, and I'm like, so when I failed it, but there was an open margin.
Right.
So that would have been a leaky margin.
Yeah.
So automatic fail.
Right.
So I was like, goodness gracious, and patient very perio involved. So imagine cervical not with 3 millimeter probing depth, like 5 or 6 millimeter probing.
Right.
So even like the matrices, nothing fit. I had to double up on everything.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, you know what? Kind of like, hey, take a deep breath. It's kind of not your fault or whatever. You're gonna jump back on it. So that was the first failure. Second failure, the people in charge of the mini clinic that we have, the directors, yeah, the directors. I'm not. Why am I saying the people? Edit that out. The directors, they were like, well, patient has more class twos. You want to do it? And for me at that point, I'm like, hey, I want to just get it done. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh yeah, which tooth? And they were like, that tooth. And again, at that moment, it was like the day that I failed that. So I didn't really realize, I didn't process the reason why I failed. So I was like, yeah, let's just get it done. So I scheduled the patient, came in, did the other class two, failed it again.
Right.
Cervical. So I was like, all right, this patient is not it.
Yeah.
And I'm not it for them.
Right.
So I was, all right, something's going on. My mojo is off, way off. So I was like, all right, you know what? I need to graduate, and this is a graduation requirement. I need to be very, very selective with the cases that I'm doing. So both of them should have not been a class two. They should have been built up and crowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
So patient had a lot of stuff going on. So I referred or transferred them to a D3. So that way has continuity of care for the patient. And I had them kind of like, hey, build up crown and all that good stuff. And then I hand selected a patient that had a very minimal lesion, but it wasn't like cervical or anything crazy. So I passed her and I did it and I passed. So
nice.
And having all that stuff going on when I was about to do the CDCA scared the living hell out of me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I never failed a board exam. And I was like, it's not going to happen today.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like my reality check that, hey, it's okay. Like your hand skills, there's always someone better than you.
Yep.
Because up to that point, I was like, I'm top notch. I'm like, I never failed anything. But I never failed anything what? Same clinic on plastic teeth. So now I can say like, hey, I did a filling and I failed. It's just bad or poor case selection.
Right.
It wasn't the right diagnosis for that specific tooth, for that patient, for that perio condition. So it was definitely a learning experience for me.
Yep. So yeah, what I said earlier, everybody's going to fail at some point.
Yep.
Especially for like the clinical side. I think the didactics is a different story, but the clinical side, man, like you might think you're the best out there. Yeah. We had an endo. It was this semester actually. I plan on talking about it a little bit in the future, but we had a to pass endo this semester, we had to do a competency on a plastic tooth, plastic premolar. Y'all probably use the same ones.
Yep.
And we did the same plastic tooth last semester. I passed it the first time. I was like, I know how to do endo. I'm good at this, at least on a plastic tooth. I went in, failed it the first time. I was like, dang, I can't believe I failed that. Went in to get it, did it again, failed it again. I was upset. I was like really upset because I failed it twice. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Went in and did it the third time. And the funny thing was this was the third time doing the exam. And so by that point, I actually learned a lot. And I went in there and just smoked it and did well. But it's coming for all of you, it's coming for everybody. And it's not something I think your scenario, what you're describing, is a little different because it's a live patient, but even then it's still a learning experience,
And like for me, I know for a fact, like quote unquote gunners in my cohort, and even like not just my school, other school, never failed anything.
Right.
And I'm like, wait until you get into real practice, whether you're working for private or DSOs, you are eventually going to fail something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, just be prepared. Because again, you don't know the processes that goes on in your head. You don't know yourself enough to deal with that failure, whether it's in person and the patient is right there being angry and upset at you, or your assistant telling you like, hey, you prepped the wrong tooth and that's a lawsuit, or you extracted the wrong tooth. Yep. I'm like, I definitely don't want that experience, and I don't want that experience to be my first failure experience.
Right.
Happens.
Well, man, like once again, we could go on for days. I think we'll lead it towards the wrap up here, but I just can't tell you how much this conversation has meant to me. Really, like one of the most impactful conversations I've ever had with somebody, and I appreciate that about you. I can tell that you are an extremely genuine person. So keep up what you're doing, and you have the opportunity and the great gift to impact a lot of lives while you're here in your own life. So, man, just all love from over here.
God bless you, man. And I love what you do. And I'm a fan. I'm going to be a fan always of you. And once I get my YouTube channel up and running again, you're definitely going to be one of the guests on there.
Heck yeah, man. Well, there's going to be a lot from us too, I think, because as y'all might be able to tell, we have the ability to speak with each other for a while. So that's we'll get back and do this again. I think there's like everything you said, I was like, okay, we can have a whole podcast episode about that topic right there. So yeah, man, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, regular.
There's something there. So we'll catch back up, and I want to hear about how everything goes. I wish you just the best of luck with everything moving forward, and we'll speak again soon.
Will do, man. Thank you so much. And God bless you, bro.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Teeth Time podcast. I hope this conversation was at least somewhat enjoyable for you. Remember to check out my YouTube channel, that's Stephen P. Ray on YouTube, where you'll find plenty of visual content about the life of a dental student and creator. Also check out my Instagram at stephen.p.ray.dentistry. Long name, I know. I appreciate each and every one of you. This has been Teeth Time, and I'm out.